What's going on, workforce? Brian here, and I've got Chris with me. We have a topic which that we were texting back and forth just really rapidly because it has a lot things to do and a lot of impact on YouTube. And typically when we get into just a texting back and forth, the best way to go forward is just to sit down and record our thoughts and have the discussion. So Chris, obviously we're going to be talking about some tweets from, I'm going to probably butcher the name, Guillaume Casselot. It sounds French, so I apologize if it's wrong, but he's talking about why YouTube's recent announcement about how they're basically not going to be recommending like conspiracy theory videos that are around flat Earth, etc. He goes into an explanation of why he thinks this is a historic win for AI and I guess for the platform. And so we were talking about it, like, what does this mean in terms of work to game? But there's also the bigger conversation. And so with that, do you want me to go ahead and just kind of like toss to the tweets here so we have that as the start of it, or do you have thoughts you want to share right away?
Yeah, we can. Well, so let's start on what the news was. So the news lately, shifting around YouTube, is a couple of things. First of all, they are going to be actively hiding things like conspiracy theories, as an example, from things that would previously. Let me start over. So up until now, YouTube has operated on a binary system. Content is okay, content is not okay. And that has largely been determined as ad-friendly and not ad-friendly. And then occasionally not ad-friendly gets removed from the platform. But a lot of times just making something not ad-friendly, making it not payable is enough. But there's videos that exist in the gray area, and conspiracy theories fall into that. You know, a lot of things like flat earthers, 9/11 deniers, far right and far left political views, extreme views on abortion for or against. Anytime you get to a controversial topic, somebody who exists on one total extreme, anti-vaxxers is one I know they mentioned, you end up with groups of people that technically are protected by free speech, but what they are spreading is not necessarily seen as good for public discourse. And because the video is filled with controversy, the YouTube algorithm's job is to just fuel watch time and fuel Google revenue. That's its job. That's what it was programmed to do.
All it has to do, make us money.
Doing a great job.
Yeah.
It's pushing people to this content. And so they're saying, hey, we're going to manually override that. We're not going to hide those videos. So if you search for flat Earth, the search results top to bottom could still be flat Earth. But when you're just scrolling through on your homepage, when it's pulling up a recommended after you watch some video on how to make a flatbread pizza, that there shouldn't be flat Earth theory right below that. That it should be smart enough to say, okay, we don't necessarily, they can have their core audience, they can have their free speech, but we shouldn't be a platform for them to spread ideas that aren't good for society. It's a dangerous line to cross because the first wave to fall is easy. The first wave is like, of course, like we're all against, you know, these people who are using this as some form of like, there was like softcore porn about like people that were breastfeeding and it was to be watched by adults. And it's like, yeah, obviously, like hide that stuff. But then it jumps to like the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So I tend to get concerned from a free speech standpoint in that if I don't defend the guy who says something I don't agree with, then who's left to defend me when they come
for you? It's like essentially I've always got to like, I like the phrase like eventually the mob comes for everybody. At some point that line of defense is going to be, you're going to be left alone. You're like, you know, you wielding the sword is going to be wielded against you. I'm going to toss to hit the line of tweets real quick and kind of talk about what he's talking about here, because I think in context it's really interesting. And so we'll go from there. He says YouTube's announcement that they will stop recommending some conspiracy theories such as flat Earth. I worked on the AI that promoted them by the billions, and here's why it's a historic victory. And this is a thread. He says Brian, his best friend's in-law, after his dad died in a motorcycle accident, he became depressed and he fell down a rabbit hole of the YouTube's conspiracy theories with flat Earth, aliens, and co. Now he does not trust anyone. He stopped working and seeing friends and wanting kids. Brian spends most of his time watching YouTube, supported by his wife. But for his parents, his family, and his friends, this story is heartbreaking. But from the point of view of YouTube's AI, he is a jackpot. We designed YouTube's AI to increase the time people spend online because it leads to more ads. The AI considers Brian the model of what should be reproduced, and it takes note of every single video he watches and uses that signal to recommend it to more people. How many people like Brian are lured down such rabbit holes every day? By design, the AI will try to get as many as possible. Brian's hyper engagement slowly biases his YouTube. One, people who spend their lives on YouTube affect recommendations more, so the content that they watch gets more views, so the YouTubers notice that and create more of it, and more people spend even more time on the content, therefore back to number one. The vicious circle is also absurd that with it explains the bot became racist in less than 24 hours. That's the Tay.ai. Example of YouTube vicious circle. 2 years ago, I found out that many conspiracies were promoted by the AI much more than truth. For instance, flat earth videos were promoted 10 times more than round earth ones. Now, I was not the only one to notice the AI harm. And he lists several people. They talked about addiction, and talked about radicalization, political abuse and conspiracies, discussing kid videos, and the danger of the AI propaganda. So, since then, the newspaper spoke about AI harms, for instance, and so this is why journalism matters. There are two ways to fix this circle like flat earth. Number one, make people spend more time on round earth videos, or number two, change the AI. And he says YouTube's economic incentive is obviously for solution number one, which we've talked about on the channel for many times. Now, after 13 years, YouTube made the historic change to go towards number two. Will this fix work? And then he says, the AI change will be a huge impact because it affects channels that have billions of views, overwhelmingly coming from recommendations. For instance, the channel something made 500 million views with deceiving claims promoted by the AI as such. And he's listing a video here. Note that this team was the most liked channel of Buckley Wolf, who came to believe his brother was a lizard and killed him with a sword. To understand how he fell down the rabbit hole, see his various different likes here. The AI change will save thousands from falling into such rabbit holes if it decreases between 1 billion and 10 billion views on such content, and if we assume one person falling for it in each 100,000 views will represent 10,000 to 100,000 falls. A concern remains that the rabbit holes are rising. I created this to identify and monitor harmful content recommended by the AI. Conclusion, YouTube's announcement is a great victory and which will save thousands of not only the beginning of more humane technology that empowers us instead of deceiving the most vulnerable. If you see something, say something. So, you said something like as we were kind of like setting up, because I didn't have a 2-cam view here, and it's really like his point is obviously coming from that of an emotional perspective, like the story of and I read his name, Brian. It's not me, guys. like I am not falling down that rabbit hole, but there's a couple of things here that are really quite interesting. Obviously, the financial incentive is number one. You know, the AI was designed to keep people on the platform. The number two piece of it, though, is that you were talking about, and I think you're right, because I remember seeing the article saying that they're not going to show like certain videos, but recommendations is really driven off the AI. And so they're changing the AI. And so the question that I was having is like, what does this mean for anybody out there? Like, how do you balance that?
The AI has never been wrong, ever.
Right.
It has always done exactly what it was told to do.
Mm-hmm.
We just might disagree with what we told it to do.
So, like, what kind of impact do you see this having? Because for me, when I look at this, when I read this, and when I went and read the official like blog that they're talking about how they're doing it, is that before the algorithm used to be pro on views, and the number, my phone's freaking out. Like, hey, we want more views, and so that's where you saw the rise of like very clickbaity things, like clickbaity titles, very thumbnails that are very they said driven but with cleavage in mind, just to get more views into that. Then they went to, like a kind of a watch percentage. And now that they're really trying to push watch time, they want to see people that are in that video more and more. And so how I look at that and how I look at this is that we don't make conspiracy videos, even though I have one that I was planning on making as a joke. But then I was like reading this and I was like, I might not make that video because I'm like, it
has the word conspiracy in it.
Because it has the word conspiracy in it. And I was like, oh, this will be funny. And then it was like,
yeah, it's like,
I still might make it.
Stormblood.
Yeah.
How many months was it into Stormblood before we had videos that weren't getting flagged? Because it had
the word blood in it. It was like, no.
It took it a while to learn that this is a game. This is fine. Okay.
All right.
So
Yeah.
yes, it's pushing watch time, but it's pushing watch time in an Amazon affiliate counter method, right? Not straight watch time. Did you catch that part, or I don't know how long we've been talking about this. So
go ahead, you break it down, because I'm seeing it as watch time.
It's not just pushing raw watch time, it's pushing the watch time on the platform. So if you are video number 2 and I am going to watch 20 videos in a row, you are going to get credit for the amount of time that I watched video 2, and then you're going to get a little bit of credit for video 3, video 4, video 5, video 6, all the way to video 20. Now, if video 19 is the reason that video 20 is the last video, the reason there's not a video 21, that's going to penalize video 19. So you don't just want to be the most amount of time they spend, you want to be the reason they stay on. So the goal is still to drive them down a rabbit hole, just one of the approved rabbit holes. So if you say getting started on Final Fantasy XIV is a video, and then that leads them to how to pick a class, what the beginning of the story is, the 5 things you should know before downloading the game, how to use a friend code, what's the best method to pay my subscription, right? Now I've been watching Brian's face for 2 hours and I haven't left to play the game. That's a good thing for YouTube. So that is what this is saying.
Okay.
It's pushing total watch time, and they have found that the number of times somebody has to click to pick the next video instead of just this seamless Netflix-style binging experience, it hurts it. So longer videos are better, but only if they encourage people to move to the next
continue to the next thing.
Video. So the fact that when I can't sleep, I fall asleep I just go to YouTube and I type in David Attenborough and I'll just watch anything that man's voice is on, and then I fall asleep. And if my phone shuts off, then that video didn't trigger me to watch another one. I listened to that.
So I missed that completely, and that's why I was like, what are we talking about here? Because it's that it says it does like a watch percentage as a part of engagement, but that's not necessarily the thing. So it's more that your video leads into watching other videos, and not necessarily on your channel, but whatever that stack ends up becoming. So then, obviously, with the conspiracy videos,
watch time of a YouTube analytics.
So then the overall conspiracy videos and all of that stuff obviously lead each other very well, and essentially that rabbit hole. How do they balance that? How do we, as a society, balance that? Because it's one of the things we see, especially within gaming, and one of the things I'm planning on talking about in length on the channel, is essentially that of the echo chamber. The videos and the opinion and the thought literally is affirming what you already believe. Like, I am less likely to click on something that challenges my perception of, whatever it is. Like, let's say, just to keep it funny, pineapple on pizza, right? Like, if I believe that pineapple on pizza is the best thing ever, and any video that says, like, here's why you shouldn't have pineapple on pizza, I'm less likely to go and engage with that. Thus, like, one of the things that he brought up that I thought was really telling, and it kind of highlights that, is that in his kind of creative loop, that people are, obviously watching more, so that the content now obviously gets watched more. And then the thing is that when YouTubers themselves notice this trend, then they participate by creating said content. And we see that very heavily within gaming and gaming culture on it. Like, oh, this video or this game is popular, so Fortnite is popular, so therefore Fortnite becomes even more popular because there's even more Fortnite content to watch, and therefore more people pick up on it. It continues to grow and grow from there. And I wouldn't say that Fortnite is a bad thing to watch. So it's like, in the context of gaming, in the context of like creators though, isn't there still a danger in that AI because of the necessary echo chamber? If I was to come out and say, and I don't believe this, but I know if somebody like trigger warning, that Warframe as a game sucks, and the company behind it, they pretend like they care and they just want your money. People who like that would essentially be
kill puppies.
What's up?
Use 100% of their profits to kill puppies.
Yeah, and it's like, now it doesn't need to be founded, but essentially that is outside of the echo chamber. Being critical of anything, that if it's a commonly held belief, is people, like, if I say Warframe sucks, it's like I might get somebody to come click on the video to come yell at me, but they're not going to stick around for why that maybe it could do better or why it could be doing this kind of thing. And so when I see these kind of like this kind of information, like it's good that we're not promoting flat Earth. It's concerning because at some point, like, what if they come and say like video games are bad for you, and like people go and spend their lives just in these video game rabbit holes, and then they come out wanting to be professional gamers. And if that industry ever bottoms out, like, now you have all these unemployed people who are very good at video games and talking for a long period of time. Like, what's your thoughts there, Chris?
So the biggest issue with these conversations is that one of the things you learn in a high school speech class is that one of the formidable ways to make an argument stick is this very anecdotal, it's a sales technique. When I'm selling homes, they remind you of this all the time. This isn't a bedroom. This is your daughter's bedroom. And if you can learn that customer's daughter's name, then you can say, oh, this is Jenny's bedroom and this is Rachel's bedroom. And that it's a proper technique to hijack the human brain. That's what it does. And so you hear it in presidential speeches, you hear it in companies that come out and say, Mary is a single mother and Tide gave Mary Tide for a year. My problem with that is that doesn't change the other 330 million people's lives in the United States, much less if you're talking about a global company like YouTube. So when you talk about a global company like YouTube and you start saying, this happened to Brian, and because of Brian, we have to make this large sweeping change to save Brian. My fear there is that's the guy's name.
I know.
Is
totally coincidental.
Because we're changing something that affects literally billions of hours of content going to billions of devices. I really would prefer to see some more cold-hearted facts maybe linked at the bottom. Like, I understand they're not as interesting to read about. We want to read about Brian. And there's also confirmation bias, or there's confirmation bias, which is a natural human thing. So if I live in a town of if we think historically where humans evolved, or without spinning off into that belief system, but humans from before, however old you think the Earth is, lived in smaller groups than they do now.
Trying to tiptoe politically correct.
Yeah, because that's not what I want this video to be about. I don't want the whole comment section getting off on how old the Earth is.
Chris believes that the Earth is 500 days old. Like,
yeah, I can remember it. I was there.
I was there when it all came into existence. Everybody's memories are implanted, and I'm the only one that is cognizant of the fact that, like, all of your pre-memories past 500 days. It was a giant server. It was a giant server reset. We're all in the Matrix. Anyway.
Okay, so people lived in smaller groups than they do now, right? New York City, things like that, those didn't exist until fairly modern history. And so your brain would evolve to say, hey, somebody was murdered. That's really relevant information because I need to not do the thing that person was doing because I don't want to die, right? And so when you find out somebody fell down a well, well, that's important. That's important information. So if I hear that, my brain needs to automatically latch onto all negative information to keep me from eating poisonous foods, keep me from going somewhere unsafe, keep me from exposing myself to anything that could negatively affect my health. But the problem is now we're connected to 7 billion people. So there are negative things happening every single second, every single day. So this isn't an algorithm issue. It's a humanity issue, and the algorithm is just taking advantage of it. So I don't know that there's an algorithm that can fix the part of our brain that views negative signals way more interesting than positive signals. Not to mention, negative things can happen very abruptly. When a hurricane hits, tens of thousands of people can be affected. Many of them can just be dead. But when we lower the mortality rate by 0.1% this year and 0.1% next year and 0.1%, after a decade, we can have saved thousands of babies from dying before they hit the age of 5. But it wasn't interesting. It wasn't like, oh, it happened on June 1st of 2018. We saved all the babies. No, we've continued to make strides and advances. And over time, we've gotten better at something. But that's not newsworthy. Yeah. And so the world always seems like it's getting worse. But in many ways, the world has done nothing but get better. The poverty line now includes a refrigerator and TV and possibly, it's like a statistically likely access to cable. Like, that's much better than 100 years ago when the poverty line could have included polio. Like,
yeah.
This is better. We've improved this.
It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, because it's like anytime, like I know when we upload a video and they're kind of making changes with the algorithm, you can kind of sometimes see these different things. Like sometimes things might just like blast off, or sometimes it's like, oh, I thought that was going to do something, and then it's like, oh, and then eventually it does, because it's like, oh, they were making a change at this block of time. And obviously January is a fun month for that. So that's where we're seeing this going into 2019. Obviously last year 2018 kicked off like very dramatically with the suicide forest and Logan Paul and that whole conversation. So it's crazy to think that we're a year out of that and what has already changed within YouTube over 2018. So we're like, this is kind of turning into a let's discuss, and I'm interested in you guys who are still, if you're still watching this video with us, and your thoughts and feedback on this topic. Is that last year, like we saw, like, and it all accumulated with the YouTube Rewind, right?
Suicide Forest.
Yeah. Well, we learned more friendly, family-friendly content. Like you can go look at some of the numbers, and if you go look at like when that happened, and then certain things that started trending afterwards, it was like if there was two things to kind of pick from, whatever was more friendly was, or advertiser friendly, or not to get YouTube on in hot water with like whatever media source to say like, oh, YouTube's doing whatever, you know, like that's, and then where it all accumulated was obviously with YouTube Rewind 2018, where literally the number one most disliked video ever, and then from the platform and people who are on it saying like, none of this represented what was 2018. It represented what was brand friendly, family friendly, you know, stamp of approval. Look at YouTube. Nobody over here doing anything crazy. I don't know. I think these things are a pendulum. It'll be neat to see how this AI evolves, because with AI, it's machine learning. They're continually to train it. They're using people and experts to train it. Hopefully that, you know, that it is a positive thing, and then we have a, you know, AI that, you know, they're not suppressing free speech in that way. I mean, as a private company, it's a little bit weird, but if they do step over that line, then they're only inviting government regulation to come in and try to balance it out, which will be weird to see how it plays out in the long run. But like, if you want a good example, go look at when Fortnite took off, like Fortnite versus PUBG. Like that's the conspiracy theory of the joke that I've been making. It's like, it is, you know, like it's not based in fact, but it's just based off of, you know, just the, you know, like a subtle change that a recommendation, you know, a recommendation within like even in business is such an interesting concept. It says we believe this, right? So if I'm sitting here and saying, I recommend Chris for this job, I recommend, oh, you got a question, go ask Chris. That recommendation carries a lot of preformed weight, and that's why the YouTube's system, when it recommends thing, that's where I think essentially what, you know, that hint of truth that, oh, YouTube thinks this is okay, but really what YouTube is saying is like, hey, we want you, like, people watch this and they went and watched another 100 videos. So I don't know. It's interesting.
Get a different conclusion from all this.
Yeah,
so I don't think that that's what we learned.
Okay.
I think that what we learned was that if you cross the line, don't apologize. Apology videos got ripped in 2018. And that Logan Paul and Jake Paul are still sitting at 18 million subscribers. Mm-hmm. And they are still both have positive subscribers month over month. They are still both being invited to be on various platforms and be spokesmen for various things. And so I don't feel that the platform gained some new moral high ground.
No, I'm not making that argument at all.
I think there are individual moments like that, like the fact that Dude Perfect over the course of their history has chosen to go the family-friendly Nerf Nickelodeon route instead of the Red Bull Bud Light route, has worked out for them in spades. And so I do think there's definitely evidence, if you're looking for it, that there's room for family-friendly channels, but which is great, because we didn't choose to be family-friendly because we were trying to make money out of it. We chose made family friendly because that's the channel we wanted to make. Yeah. So
I wanted content that my kids could watch.
And I wanted content that, like, I've worked jobs where there's a lot of downtime and you're sitting at a desk, and I like to have YouTube on, and I don't need somebody to walk in and some guy be dropping the F-bomb all the time. So I appreciate content that I can have on in a workspace.
Yeah.
So I agree with this tweet. Like, I agree with that this is a great victory. I just agree with it for a different reason. I don't necessarily think that it's important that we focus on the individual lives saved, because we're talking on a bigger scale. We're talking kind of like you don't really want Aetna and Blue Cross Blue Shield and all that messing with individual outcomes. Because they risk causing ripple effects. If they go in to change the whole system to fit, Joe Bob, then we risk that through that change, we accidentally push 0.1% of our subscribership to this healthcare plan out in the cold. 0.1% is thousands and thousands of people. And so you have to be careful dialing in too far. And you do want to keep a general, and then that does put some ownership on the individual to say, listen, YouTube doesn't have time to care about me. YouTube doesn't have time to protect me. And so YouTube is an algorithm. Its job is to sell me views. So if I'm having trouble with that, I need to have people in my life that I can trust that can take that more personal approach. I need to have Brian in my life. I need to have my wife in my life. I need to have my family in my life. Those are things that can actually be an individual influence. It is not the algorithm's job, and no number of changes to the algorithm are going to make it do that. There is no algorithm that's going to parent the whole world. So I disagree that that's the goal. And one of the things they say in here is in this blog post is, how can creators thrive in this new world? And it's like, it's simple. Just keep making great content. It says, we've heard creators, we want to make ours shorter to get a higher retention rate. Don't do this because we're looking for longer viewing sessions. And so then somebody said, oh, well, then I'll make my videos longer, assuming longer videos lead to more watch time. It doesn't necessarily lead to more watch time. So just keep making the content engaged with your subscribership. They're just being transparent on what they're doing, but it shouldn't really change what you're doing outside of maybe it changes. Okay, Brian and I are going to put out a guide on gatherers going into the rebuilding of Ishgard.
Yeah.
Should that be 3 videos or should that be 5 videos? And this is the kind of information that can fuel that, but the subject matter is going to be the same. The format's going to be the same. It's just, is it 3 videos in total or is it 5 videos in total?
Right.
That's it. So I don't know. That's what I gathered from all this. Not as actionable. I know it's a lot more exciting to think about, one person's tragic story, but I just really try hard not to get caught up in that. I think that not YouTube's job to have empathy.
Well, and that's the kind of thing about it that, the empathy sells. Empathy is the story that it makes the headlines, where, obviously the hard numbers and the real, statistics just don't. But it's interesting. I'm really happy for your perspective, because that's the question. Does that mean that the content needs to be longer? Does that mean that, or does it make sense in this case? So obviously, the best thing I would say if anybody's looking for advice on what to do, it's don't be afraid to experiment. Find what the right length for your content is. Don't overextend it in any way. But I can hear the kids, they're singing the song of wanting to go play or something like that. So we'll wrap up today's post. Thanks, Chris, for coming and engaging in this kind of
individual attention.
Yeah,
you gotta get on it.
That's what I gotta do. All right, guys, for Work To Game, my name's Brian.
My name's Chris.
Thanks so much for watching. Hope you have a terrific day, and we'll talk to you soon.
See you next time.
Hey guys, it's me, Brian. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you're new here, we hope you hit that subscribe button. Check us out. We talk a lot about video games, and we hope to at least hear from you in the comments below. We also try to respond to our comments. We really appreciate the comments, the discussion, all the various points of view that everybody is so kindly, I guess, and politely or impolitely shares with us from time to time. So anyway, guys, again, thanks for watching this video. We hope you hit that like button. We hope you hit that subscribe button. Come back for more content each and every day. We post a lot around here, and we'd love to hear from you about what you like about video games and everything, and especially if you have any questions that you're stuck on in anything. So anyway, signing off. See you next time.